What's up guys? So I'm back with another video, and it's another video on the Gears of War series, and I'll be looking into another equipment which is you can say misused a lot in the gym, and that is the proper weightlifting belt. Okay, so I have points both for and against it, so I'm gonna go for both of them actually. So let's just say I'll go for the against first. One, there is a difference between a bodybuilding belt, which is said to be a bodybuilding belt, and a weightlifting belt. Now, a bodybuilding belt is, you must have noticed, a thin belt with a kind of a wide back and a thin strap in the front. Okay, you'll see a lot of bodybuilders doing it while wearing it while doing their curls, while doing some of their movements, which they rock and roll for and want to keep their back steady for. Fair enough. My advice would be never use those belts. Okay, never. My advice, again, I reiterate my advice: never use belts when doing those movements, except for maybe compound heavy movements, heavy barbell rows, military press, squat, deadlift. Bench, if you can relate to, is because benching with a belt on is very uncomfortable, but if you roll with it and if you're going heavy, fine, right? But when you're training in the rep range of 9, 10, 15, you do not need a belt. Okay, you absolutely don't wear belts. Even if you're doing squats, don't wear a belt if you're doing 15 squats in that set. High rep sets don't require a belt. Okay, why is that? Because when you, and especially in the initial stages, in the initial 1.5, 2 years of lifting, please avoid belts unless you're going in your 1 rep max or 2 rep max range. Why? Because people kind of tend to get addiction to these belts. They get so dependent on those belts that if they are told to do that particular exercise beltless, they'll feel very helpless while doing it. I mean, they'll feel very uncomfortable. The core actually does not take that amount of weight, then it actually loses out on strength. That is a true fact. That's a fact. So please don't overuse belt. Don't use belt in curls. Don't use belt. So people use belt in order to keep their back steady because they tend to cheat while doing barbell curls. So once in a while, cheat curls is fine using a belt. But then if you're doing all your curls with your belt on, that means that you're cheating your way up and you want your back to be stable. So don't use a belt to curl unless it's very heavy, shit heavy weight. Okay, and it's once in a while. Okay, so one would be that bodybuilding thin belt, never use it. Okay, there is a difference between a proper weightlifting belt and that belt. That belt won't protect you from shit, to be very frank. If you're using that belt for heavy squats, you ain't gonna be protected, as you will not. If that injury is gonna happen without the belt, it will happen with that belt on as well. Okay, that's just a hoax, to be very honest, to be very frank. Uh, a weightlifting belt is completely different. Okay, a powerlifting belt, a weightlifting belt, kind of the same, very heavy duty, tight, uncomfortable. So against factor again would be that yes, squatting or deadlifting or benching with that belt on is going to be very uncomfortable for you because it's thick. It's 10 millimeters thick. Okay, and it is not broken in, so it's very let's just say it's not very flexible, so it will bite into your skin for sure. So you're gonna have bite marks in your skin. Definitely you're gonna have those bruise marks in your skin when you're actually deadlifting, but it will, when it gets broken in and you kind of get used to it, it's just like the feeling of actually squatting heavy weight without that padding, right? So your back is going to be sore the next day. So that is the point I'm trying to make. So my point against it would be, please do not get dependent, hence don't use it for lightweight. Next, now I'm going to be for it. Now I was one of those people earlier who was absolutely raw. Okay, and I didn't use straps. I still don't do straps. I didn't use a belt, didn't use weightlifting shoes, squatted barefoot. So that was actually cool. But then I kind of was advised into using a belt as my weight started going up. Okay, because and I also saw a sudden increase in numbers as soon as I got into a belt. Now my initial or my first belt wasn't necessarily a powerlifting belt, but it wasn't one of those thin belts either. Okay, so I'll just show you the belt that I was using or even currently use. Now I'm very close to this belt, even though it's not an expensive belt, stuff like that. You must have heard of the brand USI. Big fan of this brand, to be very honest. Uh, this is the belt that I use. I'll just show you a lot better. So this is the belt that I use, currently use, still use. It's not a proper powerlifting belt. I mean, it's not that 10 millimeter thick belt. But then this is something which is was very close to me because this is my first belt. So I've broken a lot of PRs on this belt. Also because it's very flexible, so it doesn't really bite into the skin. Okay, and it's very affordable. It's 1500 rupees. Okay, so I'll link it down below if you want. This was my first belt, and also for that amount, the value for money from this belt is insane. Okay, so now coming to the point of weightlifting belt. This, by the way, is not exactly a weightlifting or powerlifting belt. This is more of a bodybuilding belt, but then as you notice, it's not thin. It is thick, pretty thick from here as well, and pretty wide, so it can actually protect you from the light, from the weight, or from core damage. Okay, so the basic function of a weight or the belt is that when you're squatting or when you're deadlifting or when you're benching, you need to keep your core tight, right? So that is the entire point of a belt, that when you wrap it together, it keeps your core tight and in place. Now, how does it do that? Okay, I'll explain it to you. I'll explain you obviously know the concept of leverage, right? So suppose I say that you need to push back. Okay, suppose this is a wall. This is something which can be moved, a very heavy object, and this is you in between. Okay, so if I tell you maybe to push this object far away so that you can get out from the other side. Okay, suppose these sides are blocked. Okay, and you need to push this object and squeeze through the gap. Okay, so if you want to push this object simply by standing, you won't be able to get that amount of force into it. But if you actually push with your legs against something, or maybe if you push put your back against this wall and push with your legs so that you actually have leverage, okay, then it is but obvious that you're going to generate a better amount of strength, a lot more force. That is the entire point of wearing a belt. So what happens is that when you're actually sitting down in a squat or deadlifting, your core gets engaged and it flexes, right? It flexes, it applies pressure. But when you're beltless, it doesn't have anything to apply pressure against or get leverage from. Once you have that belt locked in, right, then you have something on which your core can brace against. Okay, so your core actually pushes against that lift, against that belt pushes back, core stays tight, gets engaged, you get more push out of the lift. That is the entire science behind it, right? And also the fact that it will keep the organs and everything tight. So that is the science how it uses. Now I actually started using weights because, to be very honest, I was very lucky to have that belt because it was not uncomfortable at all. I actually got hooked to it from day one. Okay, I'm still not addicted to it. Why? Because unless I am training in the range of 4 to 5 reps, which is really heavy for me in squats and deadlifts, I haven't started really benching with a belt on, to be very honest. I find it really uncomfortable, although I'm planning to shift into that because I've actually heard it increases weight. So maybe a training cycle with that on as well. I'm open to all options, as I've always told you. But right now I've not done something like that. But in my deadlifts and my squats, when I'm using this belt, is when I'm doing 4 to 5 heavy reps, not when I'm doing 15 reps or 10 reps. I do those beltless because I want to maintain my core strength as well, and I do not want to get psychologically or mentally dependent that I cannot do heavy squats or decent weight in squats unless I am using a belt. Okay, so unless I'm going very heavy in barbell rows, military press and stuff like that, say 2 to 3 reps, I don't use a belt, I do it beltless. Okay, because raw strength is also very important. The entire point of me not using straps, two, is one, I have very small hands, so I can't grip the bar properly if you add one more layer to it. Also, grip is a very good factor, or a very let's not say good factor, or a very prime factor in deadlifting. So I need to increase my grip strength. That's why I use chalk. Okay, so I started using the belt. I kind of got into belt training with it. When numbers went up, this belt was really comfortable, and also I read a lot about the belts and kind of got to know how they protect you. Okay, so I kept a good balance between the two. Now, coming to heavy weightlifting belts, okay, the first time I actually used a weightlifting belt was in my national competition, because before that I was actually using this belt itself. I was told off for not using it in a competition of powerlifting with that amount of weight, but this is something which was very comfortable to me. Let's just say after a point of time, as I've always said, it's a matter of comfort, and it was very comfortable to me. After that, I kind of thought that maybe yes, I should listen to professionals who are saying this and go for a weightlifting belt. So this is my second belt which I kind of got, and I use it so less that it's not even properly broken in. It's still not flexible enough. So this is kind of small for me as well, because I have a 35-inch waist. Yes, I am fat. So this is something which fits right in the first hole. This is how it looks like. So if you compare the two, you would see that this is a lot more flexible. This is a lot less flexible. Also, this is a lot thicker when it comes to this, and this is a lot thinner. If you see, this one is a lot thinner. This is 10 millimeters. Okay, so it's obviously going to be a lot less flexible. So the entire point of it not being flexible is being able to hold your entire core together. So this is the belt that I used in my national competitions, and after that for a while, but after that it wasn't just comfortable enough, so I actually switched back to the USI belt. But then finally I actually saved a lot of money and decided, and to be very honest, this again is not that expensive. This costs you 3,000 bucks, Core Athletics. Okay, and just a disclaimer, I have no tie-ups with any one of these brands. These are just my personal experiences with them. This might not be something that you like, right? So I'm just giving you my advice on this, and generally works for people. Anyways, so after that I actually researched quite a bit on what the best weightlifting belt is. Finally made up my mind to use the USI belt only when I'm benching to this cycle, and start a different proper professional weightlifting belt to actually increase the lifts. And what I came to was probably the big guy, the biggest guy, the biggest icon of powerlifting, Mr. Mark Bell. So I went to how much you bench. I asked a friend of mine who is pretty well versed about powerlifting, very well versed, and he's using this belt. I asked the review and I went for it. So shout out to Mr. Abhinav. He is one of the realest guys you'll actually meet. Really humble guy, really strong guy. We worked out together in college, not together, but yeah, we shared the same gym, shared the same mentality, the love for weightlifting. So anyways, I took the advice from him and I got this little bit. Now, I haven't really used it anytime. This is Mark Bell's powerlifting belt. This is the strong powerlifting belt, and this is the 13 millimeter wide powerlifting belt. So this is the big daddy of all powerlifting or weightlifting belts. So yes, this cost me a lot of money. I had to save a lot of money for this, because again, this is not something that is actually manufactured here. This you need to fly it down from the US, so it costs you shipping and customs and shit like that. Ultimately, a belt cost me 19,000 bucks. Now I'm pretty skeptical as to whether it will be worth that or whether it's going to improve my numbers. But then for once I saved money and decided to invest in a professional weightlifting belt and actually go through with it rather than switching back to my USI. I will actually go through with this, try it for 3-4 month cycle and actually then decide whether it's worth the investment or not. Now, to be very honest, I can't do shit if it's not, but I am hoping from the hype and from the reviews that I'm seeing that it actually is worth every penny. To be honest, worth at least the money it costs in the US and not the shipping charges and stuff like that. So anyway, not deviating from the topic, coming back to the topic, the tip again would be, if you're a very serious weightlifter, the USI will still help you. But if you're professional, I would say go for one of the core athletics or strong belts. Don't go for the strong belts unless you are actually going to compete. Okay, because I am still looking to compete, maybe not in every competition, but still looking to compete at least till the age of 25, 26. Okay, unless I'm really caught up in the job or stuff like that, I would definitely train to compete. That is the reason of me actually buying this. And I didn't want to keep changing stuff because it's very difficult to get used to one product. So that is why this is probably the best in the market and will be something which is durable and will actually be something which can take a beating, because my gym equipment usually take beatings. Okay, so that's my take on it. Use a belt only when you're in the 1 to 3 rep range and don't get too dependent on it. But at the same time, understand that it does save you. It is scientifically backed, and shunning it away totally will not make you hardcore. I hope that's knowledge enough. I'll be seeing you.